The Wisconsin Transportation Builders Association announcing its launch of Work Zone Safe Wisconsin, a free program that teaches you how to drive safely through a work zone.
This after 9 people were killed and more than 700 workers were injured on the job in Wisconsin just in 2023. In the First Alert Update, Samantha Cavalli shows us how one family who lost a loved one hopes this program will help drivers safely navigate the road ahead.
All he did wrong that day was go to work.
Becky Slater describes her son Zane Riley as selfless and empathetic. In late 2022, he was hit and killed in a work zone crash on Highway 23 in Sauk County. The driver fell asleep at the wheel.
And she knew she was going to fall asleep and she should pull over and call someone, and she chose not to.
In Wisconsin, new legislation passed this session requires all driver's education courses to have at least 30 minutes of work zone safety education. Work Zone Safe Wisconsin meets that requirement. It is a free online course designed to teach drivers how to drive safely through a work zone. It includes the latest laws, signage, and challenges you could encounter while out on the road within a work zone.
When you talk about construction safety, it's always about, falls, trips, hazards, deep holes. The biggest threat out there is the general public in their vehicles.
Grant Klum owns First Star Energy Services, the company Zane worked for. He says during every weekly safety meeting, they go through what happened, making sure employees understand this can happen to anyone.
Our construction crews, they have all the tools, they get everything they need to make their work zone safe. What they can't do is make sure that the general public is taking their safety into consideration as well.
Slater says it takes a village to help keep workers safe on the road. The best teaching tool parents have is their own driving habits when they serve as a good driving role model for their children.
As a community, when kids look around, they need to see good driving behavior also modeled when they look at their neighbors, when they drive through construction zones, not look over and see someone on their phone in the vehicle next to them.
While this new course is required for new drivers, the WTBA encourages all Wisconsin drivers to take the course to ensure safety on the road. In Brown County, Samantha Cavalli, Action 2 News.